The Workers' Party had a debate among themselves. They debated and discussed, but didn't decide on a party position. And so the question is, if this is how one decides, how will such a team function if they are in charge? I repeat that. The whip does not and has not prevented MPs from speaking their minds. MPs have always been free to express what their constituents think. The whip is relevant for voting, not speaking, and the whip sets out the party's position. The position with 377A is like a train approaching. The question is whether we have the courage to act or rather dive for cover to protect yourself and leave society to face the train wreck. Let me end by quoting Winston Churchill. They are decided only to be undecided, resolved only to be irresolute.
I think the minister, I refer to Minister Shanmugam, has mischaracterized my speech somewhat. What I said was specific to the party position in 2019, and here there was a context. The party position, as I mentioned, was varied and divided with no consensus as to whether 377A should be repealed, and as I said, somewhat similar to Singapore society. I lifted the whip and did not fetter the voting rights of MPs. I did not say speaking rights. I did not fetter the voting rights of MPs. This is consistent with the party position. DPM Wong announced that the PAP did not lift the whip for this debate because 377A is a matter of public policy. The Prime Minister in his National Day address this year said that not everyone is equally accepting of homosexuality, and there were considerable reservations within certain religious groups. Now, for the Human Organ Transplant Bill of 2009, the PAP lifted the whip so that MPs could vote based on their religious and ethical beliefs. The first generation of PAP leaders under Lee Kuan Yew did the same with the Abortion Bill of 1969, where Mr. Lee Kuan Yew himself rose to deliver a speech, but was absent when it came to voting. If I follow Minister's reasoning, would it be correct to say Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was abdicating his responsibilities? Now, there would be compelling reasons to suggest that for both these bills, public policy could have been deployed as a reason not to lift the whip. But the PAP lifted it anyway. Can the Minister please clarify the consistency or lack of consistency with regard to lifting the whip? At the 2011 general elections some 11 years ago, the sexual orientation of an opposition candidate came into the spotlight, with the PAP asking the Singapore Democratic Party to, I quote, come out of the closet, unquote. And the PAP's statement on this issue pursued an innuendo that made an allusion to pedophilia. In view of the speeches made by PAP MPs over the last 2 days and the call for any change on the definition of marriage to be a political question, can I confirm the PAP's position with regard to LGBTQ plus candidates standing in general elections? Thank you.
Mr. Singh mentioned democracy. He said that in the pursuit of democracy, he will lift the whip. If he now says that's not so, then he can state that for the record. He said, we are more democratic, we lift the whip, and I just wanted to point out, let us just be accurate. People can speak their minds even with the whip imposed. And when Mr. Singh says the whip will not be imposed on his MPs, he is referring to voting positions. He is referring to a party position that when he came into chambers here yesterday, the party did not have a position. That is what we are talking about. Now, when will a whip be lifted and when will the whip not be lifted? I made it clear in this case why is the whip being imposed. It is because it is a policy question with serious consequences for Singaporeans. In such a situation, lifting the whip is not acceptable for the PAP because societal interests are at stake. Abortion is quite different in that it was a matter of individual conscience, at least at that point in time. I think today the issue is well settled, in Singapore at least, unlike in some other countries. But at that time, it was a matter that raised very serious personal concerns. But I would be careful if I were Mr. Singh to bring Mr. Lee Kuan Yew into this and suggest that he somehow acted dishonorably.
Mr. Speaker, let me take up the last point. Before that, the point of abdication and suggesting that I'm saying Mr. Lee Kuan Yew was dishonorable. I never used those words. The question I asked was, what is the PAP's position with regard to LGBTQ plus candidates standing in general elections? I don't think a question has been answered.
It appears to me that, as usual, Mr. Singh wants to move the goalposts and start an entirely new debate about who can and who will stand for elections. I'm not the Prime Minister or the Secretary General of the party, but my personal view is that anyone who is not a criminal and who is of good character and of sound mind and who can work for the residents ought to be able to stand for elections. In all of this, in a democracy, it also depends on how people are perceived and accepted in society.